Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Garrett Smith of the Nutrition Detective podcast, which we're doing here right now. And today's topic, I wanted to make sure I set my goal of doing one of these a week at least. Over time, I may get up to doing more. But I wanted to do at least one of these a week. And the big one that I wanted to talk about that I think a lot of people would like some clarity on is vitamin A testing. Because, people are going and they're hearing about this whole toxicity thing. And if they beg their doctor enough to give them a vitamin A test and they come back normal and they go, well, this is not a problem for me. And I'm going, no, it is. You got to know how to. A wrench is not useful if you don't know how to use it, right? A tool is only as useful as the person using it, or as they say, it is a poor musician who blames the instrument. So if we can figure out vitamin A testing, we can do amazing things with it, and we can watch people get better while their labs sometimes stay the same. We'll get into all of that. So first thing I want to say is today, as every day when I'm talking here, I am not here giving medical advice. You are getting information that I use in my practice, that I use for myself and others. I'm not giving anybody any medical advice right now. If you choose to take any of the stuff you hear on this podcast today and utilize it for yourself, and you are not under my care or advising, you're an adult, you're taking responsibility for that. I didn't make you do anything. I didn't tell you to do anything. I don't tell people to do anything. I'm more of a trail guide getting people back to health. And it's a cooperative process. It's not doctor as God telling people what to do. That's not how I work. That's not how I work with other people. That's not how I would want a practitioner to talk to me. So if you're into, you want somebody to tell you what to do because you just want to take your mind off of it and have somebody fix you. Well, most people are finding with the health approach that that's not the way to go, because everybody is different to some extent, kind of like cars. Cars are very similar and all cars are different. So people are do all cars these days generally need gasoline? If we're talking about standard cars, yes, they need gasoline. Might they use different types of gasoline? Yes. Might one car do better on a certain type of gasoline? Sure. Do all the engines run the same way? No. Do you fix them all the same way? No. So there's differences and there's similarities. Okay, so there's general things like vitamin A, in my opinion, if you're not familiar with my work, vitamin A is not a vitamin. I'm going to call it vitamin A because that's what everybody knows it as. Vitamin A is not a vitamin. Vitamin A is a toxin. It is a plant poison. It is bad for you. You don't need a single drop of it. And myself and Grant Generou and all the people doing the vitamin A detox program, which when I say vitamin A detox program, that's on my website, nutritionrestore.com. You can buy it there if you want and get started on this. And we're seeing amazing results with people doing it and giving it time to work, because it takes time. Detoxing vitamin A is not a weekend cleanse. It's not a week-long detox. It's not just a fast. It's basically a lifestyle that people are going to have to take on for those of you who know the time limits I used to give, we're looking at, I'm not even saying 6 months anymore. We're talking a year to 2 years of hard work, of diligent work, consistent work. It's not that bad. I don't outlaw any food groups. There's foods that you don't eat, but there's no food groups that are totally off limits. Like a lot of other people out there. I think a lot of other diets out there that are working, people are simply, they don't realize they're taking out a lot of vitamin A. They're doing it indirectly, or they change the source of it. So let's get into the testing, why we're here today. So there's a bunch of ways of testing different types of vitamin A in the system. One of the problems with figuring out that somebody's vitamin A toxic is there's so many different tests that can be run, and it's all toxic. So if somebody has a problem with one type and they measure a different type and that's not their problem, they don't find the problem. So you see, if you don't look where the problem is, if you don't know what the problem is and you don't look there, then you can't find it. So we're just going to go through a bunch of them today, and I'm going to go through the problems with each one of them. There's problems with all of them. And we'll just hit each one, and we'll go over how it can be important and how it's not, and how it can be misinterpreted and how it can be used. So, first one, carotenoids. So if you don't know carotenoids, carotenoids are plant vitamin A, as they call it. All vitamin A starts in plants. So anybody who says you need your animal vitamin A, you got to eat your liver or take your milk or do this other stuff because you got to get vitamin A from animals. Kind of like cows and dairy and calcium. Where did the cows get their retinol from? Where did they get it from? Do cows just make vitamin A? Retinol in their liver? Which is actually retinol esters. If you think that cows store retinol in their liver, you've been misled. They store retinol esters mainly. That's what you store in your liver. So it's retinol esters. Everybody's been talking about retinol, and it's really retinol esters. But I'm going to talk about retinol because that's what's related to beta-carotene. So if a cow, if somebody says, well, there's this amount of retinol in a beef liver. Cows don't make retinol. They got it from somewhere. They got it from carotenoids, from plants. So for people to say that the only real vitamin A is retinol, the retinol came from carotenoids, from plants. So animal vitamin A came from plant vitamin A. You can't get around this fact. Here's an interesting little scientific fact. Beta-carotene, the most powerful, if you will, of the carotenoids, one beta-carotene molecule turns into two retinol molecules. Your body cleaves it, it makes two retinol molecules. Okay? Two, huh? So one beta-carotene turns into two retinols. Are you starting to see the problem here? So we can measure beta-carotene in the blood. There's a lab test for it. You can go and look on LabCorp's website. You can look on Quest's website. There is a beta-carotene test. Do I use this test? No. Carotenoids are toxic in themselves, but they're not the real culprits. And because of, some of you may have heard of the BCM01 gene, which is part of the genetics that determine how fast you can cleave the beta-carotene into two retinols. Different people, some people are going to be faster at that, and some people are going to be really slow at that. And that just doesn't impact what I'm going to do at all. I mean, with all of this stuff, somebody says, well, I have high beta-carotene, and somebody else says, I have high retinol esters, and somebody else says, I have high serum retinol. What do we do to fix each one? Stop eating all forms of carotenoids and retinoids. That's it. They all get fixed the same way. I have this genetic problem. I have this genetic problem. I don't eat it. Stop putting it in. Stop intoxing, and then you can start detoxing. And vitamin A, the detox is real. I'm beginning to start to think that most people, when they're going through detoxes, depending upon what they're putting in, if they're on like a juice fast, they may be like carrot juice and they feel bad on it. They might be actually intoxing and making themselves feel worse. But a lot of people, I think, when they're going through detoxes are actually feeling worse because they're dumping vitamin A. It may not be other things. It may simply be vitamin A. And the people who have on the vitamin A detox program know about this because they'll go through a cycle of detox and then they will notice something has improved. Something has gotten better. That's real detox. Real detox is when you feel okay, you go into a detox, you don't feel good, you come out the other side, you feel better. That's the way it's supposed to happen. If somebody has you in detox for a year and they're just like, sorry you feel bad, you've just been detoxing and retracing for a year, and sorry you feel like crap, and you continue to feel like crap, and you're feeling more like crap along the way, but you're still detoxing. No, you've been lied to. Doesn't happen that way. Real detox is cycles. It's like washing your clothes. You don't constantly wash clothes. You accumulate clothes, dirty clothes, then you wash them all at once. And then you have clean clothes again. That's detox cycles. They're cycles, like washing dishes, washing clothes. You detox your dishes and your clothes, and then they're clean. So constant detox or constant retracing, figment of your imagination. Maybe a health practitioner sold you on that lie. It doesn't work that way. But is detox very real? Absolutely. You can go through the research and it's all right there. So beta-carotene, we don't bother with beta-carotene. If you've ever been orange in your life from eating tons of various plant foods, mangoes, carrots, it doesn't have to be orange or yellow to turn somebody orange or yellow. Guaranteed you got vitamin A toxicity. People will like to say, well, but when you have too much vitamin A, your liver stops converting the beta-carotene into retinol. Let me give you a little thing that they didn't look up in the research. When there are carotenoids in your skin, right? So if people are eating lots of carotenoids and they store it in their skin, they turn orange. If they stop eating so many carotenoids or they take all the high carotenoid foods out of their diet, it eventually slowly goes away. Now, the body doesn't have good ways of getting rid of carotenoids by themselves. That's why it has to cut them. Part of the detox pathway of vitamin A is the body cuts it in half into 2 retinols, and then the body can start storing it or turning it into retinoic acid as part of the way of getting rid of it. That's how it does it, okay? Your body wants to get rid of it. So, I have a paper that showed that carotenoids applied to the skin, they do penetrate. Oh my gosh, do they penetrate? I think vitamin A taken through, if people put on retinol creams and stuff like that, I think that actually gets in better. Better is a loaded term there. It penetrates more effectively than taking it orally. I'm sure of it. When I used to give vitamin A to my clients back in the dark days of me not knowing any better, I would tell them, you can rub it on your skin. It rubs in, it absorbs really well. Because I saw that in my work. It was, the vitamin A was doing what I thought it was supposed to do. I didn't realize that it was causing problems over time. And we got away from that and we figured it out. When you know better, you do better. So anyway, we don't bother with testing beta-carotene. It doesn't get us anywhere. Okay? Then we go into retinol esters. Some people out there who think they know about vitamin A testing, they throw out, oh, just go get your retinol esters tested. The test is called Retinol-Palmitate. Let me tell you about how little a person who is talking about it in that way knows about the actual test. Retinol esters, I believe somebody's not going to, don't quote me on this, I didn't count them, but the last I saw a paper on it, I think I counted about 7 or 8 different types of retinol esters. Retinol stearate, retinol palmitate, there was all sorts of them. Retinol oleate. So, retinol esters would be a test that tests all of them, the total. Retinol palmitate would be a test that tests one of them. Okay? There are very distinct studies where they talk about if you have a certain percent of your total vitamin A in the blood, so they measure retinol and they measure your retinol esters. And if your retinol esters are more than 5%, the lowest number that they've gotten to is 5%. 5% of your retinol esters or more are, well, I'm sorry, 5% of your total vitamin A is retinol esters or more, you are vitamin A toxic. What the retinol esters are standing in for is they're showing you how much retinol esters you have stored in your liver. So it's a better marker of toxicity level than any other test that's out there, really. So, Dr. Smith, where can I go get this retinol esters test? Nowhere. No one does it. Go try to find it. Go. It's only done in research. Gosh, wouldn't it be really hard to find an epidemic of toxicity in the public if they can't do the test themselves? If even me as a physician, if I can't order a test, the best test in the literature to show chronic vitamin A toxicity, if I can't order it, how in the world is anybody going to figure out this problem? Best test available, not available. So the one test that is available, ARUP, A-R-U-P, they're a reference laboratory. They do a test you can buy, which is retinol and, which we'll get to retinol in a sec, and retinol palmitate, one ester, just one of like the 7 or 8. Do you think that's a good test? The different retinol esters that would be formed would be dependent upon the free fatty acids in your diet that are feeding, your body takes retinol and binds it to a free fatty acid like palmitic acid or stearic acid, and then you have a retinol ester and it stores it in your liver. They measure one. So retinol palmitate in the study that I found, I believe it was a cadaver study, was about 50% on average of the retinol esters in the liver. In ferrets, they had about 70% of it was retinol palmitate. What is the normal in humans? I think the study I looked at where they were measuring the retinol esters and the percentages of the different ones, I think it was only somewhere between like 3 and 12 people that they measured. Not a lot. Nobody would say that's a great study to go by. So anyway, there is one test you can do, retinol palmitate. It's going to be a pain in the butt to get it. It's so much of a pain in the butt to get that I don't even mess with it. Because first of all, I don't know the percent of retinol esters. That's a really good number in terms of across a population. Like 3 cadavers, not giving a good spectrum of things to go by. So retinol esters would be a great test if it was available. The next best test is retinol palmitate. And even I'm not running it because it's such a pain in the butt to get. So again, how do we fix it? Vitamin A detox. We just avoid, the main thing is to avoid vitamin A, carotenoids, lutein. See, here's one of the problems with people who are going out on the internet and searching for vitamin A in foods. They'll type in vitamin A content in asparagus or vitamin A content in oats or whatever. Lutein and zeaxanthin don't convert to retinol. They cause vitamin A toxicity, but they don't convert to retinol. So when companies measure the beta-carotene content and when they measure the retinol content, they don't register the lutein and zeaxanthin, which are causing just as many problems, if not more, than all the other ones. So this is why the work that I put into this it's significant and it covers a lot of bases that a lot of people are missing. So that's the retinol esters. Then we go into the retinol isotope dilution. Start hearing the word isotope. I'm going to tell you, I start thinking radioactivity. You know, start hearing the word, go search around for the word isotope and type in isotope and radioactivity. All I know is the only place you're ever going to find retinol isotope dilution is in studies. Nobody's doing it in real people. I mean, not in real people, in lay people, in patients. They're doing it in studies, mostly from what I've seen in Africa. And they give you this isotope vitamin A, and they see how fast it comes out. And they measure it in the blood, I believe, too. I didn't look into it that deeply because I don't care about it because it's not available. I don't need to learn about something that's not available. So there's that. That's been said to be one of the best tests out there. It's even less available than the retinol esters. So not too useful. Retinol-binding protein. Retinol-binding protein is a measure of the binding protein that carries retinol around your system. Or as I like to think of it, it escorts vitamin A around your system and protects especially your skin and your eyes from the damage of vitamin A. Retinol-binding protein, in theory, would go up the more retinol you have floating around, right? Because your liver makes retinol-binding protein to bind to retinol, to protect you against it. How do we know this is true? Because the science you'll read out there, most of it will say, well, retinol-binding protein is critical to deliver vitamin A to the cells that need it, and that's what it does. And I'm like, okay. So there was a study done It was German twins, I believe. Twin women. Scientists found out about this and they said, let's go study them and see. So they went there and they did all the medical tests. This was I think back in like the 40s maybe. They studied these women, no health problems whatsoever except for some acne and a little bit of night blindness. Why were they studying these two women? Because these two women had a very rare genetic defect where they didn't make any retinol-binding protein. They made none. So according to modern nutritional science, well, they shouldn't be delivering vitamin A to any tissues at all. And they should be just falling apart at the seams, right? They had no health problems whatsoever other than a little bit of acne and partial night blindness. They had extremely low levels of vitamin A, 1/6 of the normal levels. Night blindness and skin problems. So let me give you an example of how we know this is connected. I'm saying you need retinol binding protein to bind onto vitamin A to protect you from it, especially your skin and your eyes. Zinc. Zinc is often found to be beneficial in acne, a vitamin A toxicity situation, in my opinion. You need zinc to make retinol binding protein. If you don't have enough zinc, you will not make retinol binding protein. Therefore, if somebody was having skin problems due to vitamin A toxicity, and they took some zinc and that helped them make retinol binding protein, that would reduce their skin issues, which it often does. Listen to me here. If you're listening to this and you go, oh, well, Dr. Smith says if I have acne, I should take some zinc. I didn't say that. I didn't say that at all. There may be some relation to it, but I'm not here telling anybody to go take supplements based on what I'm saying here. Okay, so zinc is one of the things that I want blood tests for. And if I have any questions on what the blood tests are showing me, because there can be, not confusing, but there can be interesting things that happen with zinc and copper in the blood. I use the hair test, zinc and copper, and other people's and their responses to things in the past, as I can get them out of their history, to decide what to do about zinc and copper. Too much zinc for too long can deplete your copper. As people do the vitamin A detox over time, they need less zinc. Zinc is super helpful when it's needed. This is why one of my other slogans is we test, we don't guess, then we address. People out there willy-nilly taking zinc, good luck. Generally, zinc deficiency is common, but the people who don't need zinc and they take it, they do not feel good. So zinc is one of the things that I want. That is one of the absolute things I want the most data on, because it's super helpful and you just don't need to mess up we don't need to mess up anything we don't need to mess up, right? So not eating muscle meat protein will absolutely not give you any zinc. So don't do that. Or as I was saying earlier in my private video group here on Facebook, I was saying don't not eat meat. I know it's a double negative, but I like it. Don't not eat meat. So the double negative makes it a positive, right? Eat some meat. Eat some muscle meat. Got retinol binding protein. Oh, retinol binding protein. What we'll see as we start doing, as in my nutritional restoration work with individual people, we'll often see their retinol binding protein go up. Well, why would that happen? Because they have too much vitamin A toxicity, and giving them the nutrients that their body needs to make retinol binding protein and protect themselves and potentially even move it out faster, detox faster, they increase the amount of the retinol binding protein. And usually along that way, they're feeling better. So we know that it's not a bad thing. Your body would not make, there's some studies out there where they'll say, well, they have low retinol and high retinol binding protein. And they have lots of inflammation. So then modern medicine is starting to think, well, retinol binding protein must cause inflammation then. How about this as another example or another way of looking at it? What if the retinol binding protein lost its retinol along the way? Some of it's retinol in the blood, but there seems to be a lot missing. Like the retinol binding protein is way up here and the retinol is way down here. You want them fairly matched. This is up here and this one's down here. What if some of that retinol broke off and turned into retinoic acid, which is the worst form of vitamin A for you? The chemical peel, the Accutane, the Retin-A. Retinoic acid is studied as an adjuvant in vaccines. It's studied as chemotherapy. Do those sound good to you? So what if that retinol degraded into retinoic acid, and when they measure for retinol, that's not what they're looking for, and so they don't find it. And then you're stuck burning up, chemical peeling on the inside. Your skin, your cells are getting dissolved, just like a chemical peel with retinoic acid does to the face. But they don't find it in the blood. They see all this retinol binding protein and all this inflammation, and they go, well, it must be the retinol binding protein. No, it's retinoic acid. So retinoic acid, let's talk about that. I've had people ask me, so can we test for retinoic acid then? No, nobody does that. Go look for a test. It's almost like, geez, it's almost like medicine doesn't really want anybody outside of the research finding vitamin A toxicity. Starts to seem that way, doesn't it? There's all these tests that they do in the research, but nobody can get them outside. Retinoic acid, I think the last study I saw, one of the big studies I saw on discovering new forms of retinoic acid in the blood, I think it was 2012. And I think there was 12 different types. So you can measure total retinoic acid, or you could measure each individual retinoic acid. One of the retinoic acids they measure in the body is 13-cis retinoic acid, which is also known as Accutane when it's a pharmaceutical. Your body will turn carotenoids into Accutane. It's in the literature. There was one paper where they gave people a vitamin A. This was a crazy paper. They gave guys vitamin A supplements, or they had them eat liver. Same amount of vitamin A, they were saying. It was the same amount of vitamin A in both. Guess which one raised their retinoic acid more? It was the liver. It's all the same, folks. Vitamin A, whether it's, supplement or food, it all ends up the same place as retinoic acid. We can't measure it. We can measure it in studies. Nobody measures it in real life. Okay? So, I'll talk about all these different tests, and I'll tell you, you can't get most of them. And then finally, the one that everybody's been waiting for, serum retinol, or when people talk about a blood vitamin A test. When you're talking about blood vitamin A testing, they're talking about serum retinol. So when I'm talking about measuring vitamin A in the blood from here to the rest of this podcast, I'm talking about serum retinol, blood vitamin A, same thing, okay? Serum retinol. In Europe and other places, they measure it in micromoles per liter, or the UMOL/liter, big L, right? In the US, we measure it in nanograms per deciliter. Yep. Just want to double check. I got so many units in my head from all these lab tests. I wanted to make sure I had that. So the ranges are all over the place on serum retinol. And I'm going to be talking in the quote unquote American units. I'm going to be talking in nanograms per deciliter for most of these ranges, because I haven't always looked up the standard, the mole units. I can only keep track of so many things, and I use the American units because I'm American. Okay, so the ranges are all over the place. I've seen ranges down to 18. Here, wait, let's back up 1 second. Serum retinol. The ranges are different for different age groups. That's kind of weird. The lowest range is for babies. And as the age groups go up, the ranges slowly start rising. Okay? This is a concentration measure, folks. This is not an absolute. They're not measuring how much vitamin A was in the blood sample. They're measuring the concentration of it, how much per unit was in there. In the literature, you'll hear them say, well, vitamin A is very important for proper development. Wouldn't that tend to mean that the highest concentration should be in babies and not as we get older? It would seem to make sense to me that if anybody needed it for development, it would be younger, not older. But knowing that they set the ranges for labs based on 95% of the people have to fit in the range. That's their goal. It'd be like if you were in a class and the teacher said, I'm going to pass 95% of you, regardless of how crappy you do on the test. In a class, you might be like, well, that's cool. Then I don't have to worry about failing, really. I mean, it's only 2.5% on either side that fail. Okay? They curve the test to fit 95% of the people in there. So if you were to see that vitamin A levels were slowly rising as ages went up, and I'm sitting here and Grant Generou's sitting here telling you that there's an epidemic of vitamin A toxicity, and we saw that the serum retinol slowly went up as people got older, and it's a disease of accumulation. Does it start to make sense to you? So we have the pattern of serum retinol. Serum retinol is the best test we're going to get. Is it perfect? No, not at all. Is it worth doing? I have my clients do it. I think getting at least one of them done is useful. More than one, we'll get into why that it's not critical to get more than one. It can be useful, but don't have to do it. So let's go into the ranges. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to say European ranges because I don't have a better term for it. There's American ranges and there's European ranges. So in the American range, so this is an important part to catch. If you have a vitamin A test and you're wondering, am I really toxic according to Dr. Smith? I want you below, and this range, I came up with through my chats with Grant. He and I need to get on the Skype again soon. Below 20 nanograms per deciliter, 19.6 if you want to get fancy with it, in the American units. So below about a 20 in American units, and below 0.7 micromoles per liter in the European units. Okay. So you might have thought you were okay in the range, and then you look at my ranges and you go, whoa, I'm like 2 times what Dr. Smith said. I'm like 3 times what Dr. Smith said. And boy, I have health problems, but I didn't think I had vitamin A toxicity because my lab was in the normal range. The normal ranges for most labs suck and are useless. Could you imagine if we passed 95% of the people who took the test to become air traffic controllers, no matter how bad they did on the test? Who's getting blood tests? People getting blood tests are generally not well. You have a biased population getting blood tests in the first place. They're sick. That's why they're getting blood tests. Yes, there's people out there who are testing because they feel great and they just want to check on their bloods and make sure everything's great, okay? And stays great. That's not many people. How many people you know who are really healthy these days? So You have a biased population, they're passing 95% of them. And because they passed 95% of them, no matter how poorly they did, does it make sense to you that if there was a worldwide or systematic poisoning going on, that the ranges would shift upwards as the population got more toxic? That's what's going on. So that's what I want people below, is about a 20 nanograms per deciliter or a 0.7 micromoles per liter. When we start seeing people in the 50s and 60s, boy, they got issues that are totally vitamin A related. 30s and 40s too, yeah, absolutely. But the 50s and 60s are definite. Now, let me tell you about the ranges that I see on adult vitamin A tests. I go mostly by LabCorp because that's who I use here. Adults, they take them down to 18 as being where deficiency starts. So my range, being that I believe vitamin A is a poison, I actually want people deficient in vitamin A on those blood tests. My goal is to have them deficient in poison. Yes. I don't believe vitamin A serves any necessary biological function. I've got lots of people. The last I checked on the vitamin A detox, we had 350 people on there, and they're all on low vitamin A diets. And over time, most of them are noting improvement, slow improvement after improvement. So it's working, and people aren't going to convince me that we need vitamin A. Grant's, I forget if it was gerbil or hamster experiment where he fed them a completely vitamin A free diet. Boy, that kind of shattered that. And Grant did his own vitamin A blood test. He was at a point, remember I said 0.7? He was at a 0.1. He's doing fine. There is no biological need for vitamin A. We do need the other things that protect us from vitamin A, especially that help make retinol-binding protein. We're talking about enough protein in the diet. We're talking about enough taurine in the diet. We're talking about enough zinc in the diet. We're talking about enough vitamin E in the diet. Sometimes people need to supplement. Sometimes they don't. You want my take on your situation? That's what I do in nutritional restoration. That's my thing. Okay? So we're moving this along, but like I said, this isn't a weekend detox. This is like a year to 2 years. So on that note about testing vitamin A and what happens with the test. So let's say we get a first vitamin A test, and let's say the person's at a 50. So I'm going to say that person, probably 80 to 90% of their health issues are vitamin A toxicity related. And if we get rid of that problem, I am fairly positive that 80 to 90% of their problems are going to go away. So they're at a 50. They start the vitamin A detox. They're 4 months into it, and they decide on their own to run another serum retinol test. I'm fine with that. I don't ask for it, but I'm fine with it. They go and run it, and they do another consult with me, and they're like, "Doc, why did my vitamin A go up to a 55? I stopped eating vitamin A 4 months ago. How did it go up?" So now we're going to talk about what vitamin A in the serum, in the blood, is really showing, in my opinion. First, we have the science saying, well, vitamin A in the blood, serum retinol, is not a good measure of vitamin A toxicity because people can be toxic even when their serum retinol is within the normal range. First, I would tell you maybe your range sucks. What do you think about that? Secondly, what if they just have a ton of retinoic acid that you're not measuring? So there's all sorts of problems with toxicity, and I have people who are, relatively in the 20s or 30s on vitamin A, and they still have plenty of health problems. Serum retinol is not it's not a great marker of toxicity because of what I'm going to explain to you of what it's showing. And if you have somebody on a vitamin A free diet or a very low vitamin A diet for 4 months, and their level's still the same or slightly lower or even higher, what is driving that? Where's the vitamin A coming from? They're not eating it. It's coming from their tissues. It's the only place it can come from. They're pulling it out of their savings account of vitamin A. That shows how much is in there. 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, and their level is still just as high as it was effectively. The only place that can come from is from their tissues. So then there's other people. This is one of the scientific proofs that you don't need vitamin A. All the vitamin A deficiency symptoms are from other deficiencies, especially how those deficiencies cause you to be more susceptible to vitamin A toxicity. Positive of it. Positive. So scientists will say in their studies, they'll say, well, serum retinol is not a good marker of deficiency because you can have normal vitamin A in the blood and still be showing vitamin A deficiency symptoms. What? They really say stuff like that. You could have normal vitamin A in the blood, delivering vitamin A to all the tissues, and yet you could have vitamin A deficiency symptoms. Wait, are you kidding me? How does that work? Let me give you another example with a car with gasoline in it. Your car's running gasoline through the tubes to get the engine running, right? As long as you have gasoline running to the engine, will your engine run just fine? Yes. As long as gasoline's running through those tubes, does it matter whether, does the performance of your car change if you're at 3/4 tank, half tank, quarter tank, 1/10 of a tank? When does the performance of your car change? Depending upon how much gas is running through it. When the gas tank is right at empty, and you just can't get enough gas through those tubes, okay? The very statement that people can have vitamin A deficiency symptoms when they have vitamin A coursing through their veins in an okay amount by those very same scientists means that it's all bull. There's no deficiency. There never was. It's a bunch of fraud, whether they knew it or not when they put it on people. So we got scientists saying that serum retinol is not a good marker of toxicity because people can be toxic while they're in the normal range. And serum retinol is not a good measure of deficiency because you can have deficiency symptoms even when your serum retinol is normal. And I'm just like, you guys might be listening and going, well, why would we ever run this test then? Because when you know how to use it, it gives us good information. Just because there's not very many people who know how to use a tool doesn't mean that the tool is useless. So, back to the thing I was talking about before. Somebody tests first, they're at a 50, 2.5 times as high as I want them. They test again, and they're at a 55. Doc, how did this go up? And I'll say, well, how are you feeling? Because see, right, if doctors don't ask you, like, if they're looking at your labs and they don't care how you feel, which do you care about? Do you care about how you feel, or do you care about your labs? Would you rather feel like crap and have amazing labs? Or would you rather have labs that seem kind of off and feel amazing? I know which one I'd choose. I'd rather feel amazing and then look at those labs and go, I wonder what's wrong with those labs. It's like I would tell people, it's not that, not all clothes look great on every person. If a certain piece of clothing doesn't look good on you, it's not your fault, it's the clothes, right? They may just not look good on you. So, it may not match you. So, what is the serum retinol showing? Well, it's the vitamin A in the blood. Where does the blood take things to be detoxed? What does the blood do? It's your highway, stuff in and out of your tissues. So if your body wanted vitamin A, which I don't believe, it would use the blood to deliver it. But also if your body wanted to detox vitamin A and get rid of it, it would also use the blood It brings things in and it gets rid of things. So here's what I believe. They've been on the detox for 4 months. Their vitamin A went from a 50 to a 55, or let's say it went down to a 45. Doesn't really matter. It didn't change drastically. And they're disappointed because they wanted to I went on the vitamin A detox and I want my vitamin A to just drop like a rock. Doesn't work that way. You have a fat-soluble poison stored in your liver and in all the fat-soluble tissues of your body, including your skin and even your eyes. It's going to come out at the rate your body wants to release it in a fairly safe manner for you. Your body's going to say what's safe and what's not, as I was talking about in the private Facebook group earlier today. Your body will decide how fast it wants to let it out, because if it let it out all at once, vitamin A can kill you. I have a newspaper, a New York Times article on my website. I think it was 1971. Some smart guy scientist thought he was going to become immortal. So he decided to drink a gallon of carrot juice a day and take something like 50 to 70,000 units of vitamin A on average per day. Guess how long it took vitamin A to murder him? 10 days. 10 days. He killed himself. They said he was bright orange when they found the body. Okay. Guess he didn't play his cards right. Okay. So we don't want the body to detox too fast. No, we do not want it to go too fast. So the body is the ultimate determiner of how fast you will detox, because your body lets it out. An analogy I was doing, like if you won the lottery, in this case, the lottery being tons of vitamin A in your system, which is not a good thing. The lottery would be great. Tons of vitamin A in your system would be not good. And you get the one where they pay you monthly. They give you a monthly check. Doesn't matter whether you spend that money fast in the meantime or you save it. You're only going to get a check monthly. You can only get that money as they pay it to you. You can't get it faster. So vitamin A detox is only going to go at the speed that your body lets it out. Okay? That's the serum retinol. What I believe serum retinol is showing is the rate at which your body is willing to let it go into the bloodstream to then get to the liver to go through detox, and then either go out through the bile or go out through the kidneys. It is showing how fast your body is willing to release it into the blood, or is being forced to release it into the blood. So let's go into that again. So if you have somebody who is, let's say they were measuring their vitamin A, they were getting yearly tests, and they saw their vitamin A slowly going up, serum retinol in the blood slowly going up, and they felt like they were getting worse. They were feeling worse and worse and worse. So I like, another analogy I use on serum retinol is it's like miles per hour on a freeway. You're driving on a freeway, you're going a certain speed, you're using gasoline to keep you at that speed. Cruise control, your body likes a certain number for retinol. That first example, 50-ish. I said it might go up to 55, might go down to 45. 50-ish, close. So you don't know how far you have to drive. You don't know the length of the trip. Generally, the further you have to go, the more toxic somebody is, the faster you want to drive to get there, right? There's two things that could make us drive faster. One would be somebody's chasing you. Think of that as a lot of vitamin A toxicity. A lot of vitamin A toxicity will drive that number up because it has to, because you don't have enough places to store it. So you have overflow into the blood, it drives the number higher. If people were sick and they were seeing themselves get sicker and they saw their vitamin A going up, that would be a bad example of them getting more toxic. Okay? However, what if we have somebody on the detox and they do that test and they're 50 and then they're 55? What's going on with that? But they're feeling better. Doc, my eczema's gone. My joint pain's gone. My sleep is amazing. My diarrhea is all gone. I'm not allergic to, I'm not seasonal, I don't have seasonal allergies anymore. All that stuff. We see all that stuff. So these problems are going away. They're feeling better, but doc, my vitamin A went up. This doesn't make any sense. Another way to drive faster is to soup up your engine so that you can drive faster. This is why serum retinol is, without good interpretation, it's not very useful. But with good interpretation, I'm kind of good at figuring out these things. I mean, I know what I'm good at. I'm good at figuring out things like this. When we know what it can mean, then we can use it. Do I need to see a serum retinol? All I need to see, if somebody said, Doc, I went on the vitamin A detox for 3 months and I've improved, this has improved this. They say, do I need to do a vitamin A test? I'd say, not unless you want to. The proof is in the pudding. You took vitamin A out of your diet. You improved. You have, sorry, I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. You have vitamin A toxicity. Excuse me. Jeez. So if you take something out of somebody's world, like vitamin A, and they feel better, what was the problem? Probably the thing you took out. You stopped them intoxing so that they could start detoxing. Very simple. So if they said, do I need a vitamin A test? I'd say no. If you don't need one, I don't need one. We confirmed that that's the problem. Not that I need to do that in most people, but if they wanted to do it, that's fine. Grant didn't run a vitamin A test when he first started doing his journey of figuring out this whole vitamin A toxicity thing. So I didn't do it when I started mine. I could have, but I'm more of the type that I just jump in. I read Grant's stuff and it floored me. And I said, I got to get started on this. I took out my vitamin A supplement that I had been taking. And within a week, I started detoxing. I hadn't even started the diet yet. All I had to do was take out the supplement and I started detoxing. That was where I went, whoa, this is legit. And over time, I've seen, let's see, let me think of all the things that have gone away from me since I've been doing this. My psoriasis is gone. My insomnia is gone. Like if I wake up once in the middle of the night, I'm like, wow, something's wrong. Because I sleep through the night now. My urinary issues, which I believe were related to early prostate stuff, are gone. My dad died of prostate cancer, so there's a genetic weakness there, if you will. But that's all gone now. What else? Oh, I was just commenting today, my keratosis pilaris, which everybody on the internet loves to say, it's a vitamin A deficiency. No, it's vitamin A toxicity. That's almost gone completely. What else? Oh, dandruff that I've had over, on and off over years, that's gone. I know I just sneezed twice, but, generally my seasonal allergy symptoms, my dad had really bad seasonal allergies. Those are generally, I wouldn't even consider them an issue. Lots of people are having lots of respiratory stuff these days. People who haven't ever had allergies before, whether they're on the program or not, are saying there's stuff in the air, folks. Maybe you haven't noticed the blooming that's going on. Like everything is blooming all at once. So people are getting weird coughs. There's stuff in the air. It's not all allergies. If you've ever been diagnosed with non-allergic rhinitis or sinusitis, but they're like, it's not allergic, that's the doctor saying, you have issues that we don't know what's causing them. Think about this. If you were breathing in a toxin, something toxic in the air, nobody says they're allergic to cigarette smoke. But it'll cause you respiratory problems, right? It's simply poison. So not everything has to be allergic. There can just be nasty stuff in the air. Maybe you've seen the research recently coming out about how household chemicals, like cleaning chemicals, can be as bad as smoking 20 cigarettes a day. It's all just poison. It's not necessarily allergies. Not everything is allergies. Eating liver and feeling like crap doesn't mean you're allergic to it. It might just mean you're vitamin A toxic. So you always have to differentiate between allergies, allergic reactions, and toxicity reactions. So back to the serum retinol. In the literature, it has been said, along with that deficiency thing I was talking about, they'll say, well, you can have a normal vitamin A level and still have deficiency symptoms because this is the part that we can use. I'm going to try to do this well for you guys on the screen. This is the way vitamin A depletes out of the system. It goes down very slow. It goes down very slow, very slow. Think of a car driving with the gas. The level goes down very slow, until all of a sudden the gas tank is empty, and then whew, it goes along, and then it just drops once you're empty. That is when that serum retinol number drops to 0. Now, what kind of pattern would that follow? What if your body wanted to detox something? Your body would keep the speed, remember that miles per hour? It would keep it as high as possible, use up all that gas until the gas is empty, boom. Your body wants to get rid of that. I posted an article on Facebook and on the blog forum about how when you have, the more retinoic acid you have in your system, the most toxic form of vitamin A, but the one that science says is the most biologically active. It is biologically active. Poisons are biologically active. Absolutely. Biological activity just means it does something. So, retinoic acid. The more you have of it in your system, science says, the faster your body ramps up the detox pathways for it. If it was a real vitamin and your body wanted it, why would your body speed up the breakdown the more you have of it? Doesn't that fit a toxic profile? The more toxins you have, the faster your body wants to get rid of it? You really should go and look up vitamin A toxicity and learn all about the symptoms. You can go to my website, nutritionrestore.com, and go on the blog forum and read all about it. I've got about 400 posts there. And when you see the list of symptoms and how toxic this stuff is, how something cannot be this toxic and be necessary for life. It just can't. And you can look at all the different veterinary studies that I found on lab monkeys getting poisoned with vitamin A and lorikeet birds getting poisoned with vitamin A. And, dolphins are starting to turn orange. Crazy stuff. Dogs. I have multiple people in the private forum on the website, which you get access to with the detox program, who are reducing the vitamin A that their animals are getting, and their animals are getting better. What other evidence do people need? Vitamin A is a poison. And there are various tests, and the only one I use is serum retinol. Do I have to have it? If people are going to do the program, no, I don't have to have it. But to have one at the start is really, really useful. Then I can kind of tell people, like, here's where you're starting at. And, you've got a long way to go, or you don't. Or we can't really tell the level of toxicity in terms of how long somebody has to go. That's the retinol esters. Or actually, you know what? I forgot one vitamin A test. Funny that I forgot this one. It's the gold standard. A liver biopsy. They take a big old needle and they stick it in your liver and they take a chunk out of your liver. And then they examine it under a microscope. They blend it up and they analyze it for how much vitamin A is in there. They check it with a fluorescent lamp for vitamin A. Y'all ever remember those the UV skin tests where they would shine it on your face to see the bright spots? Because vitamin A fluoresces. Vitamin A is your skin damage, folks. That's what it is. That's why when they look at a liver for vitamin A toxicity, they put a black light on it. That's why when they're doing that little skin test to look for skin damage, they put a black light on it. It's all the same. It's all the same. People were talking about lipofuscin. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. It doesn't really bother me. Go and type in lipofuscin and carotenoids. It's carotenoids. That's the basis, the foundation of it. That's the skin pigment that a lot of people associate with like aging spots, stuff like that. It's carotenoids. So I'm all done with what I was going to go over on the test. If any of you want to test with me and get started on the, we test, we don't guess, then address, look on the website. We got programs on there for sale. There's also the vitamin A and the poison/vitamin A and glyphosate detox program on the website, which is just a standalone online program. It's not an ebook. It's not downloadable. It is on the website, just so there's no misunderstandings. It's there. If you just wanted to, if you're a DIYer, you can do that. You don't get all the benefits of the stuff that I've talked about and the other knowledge that I have that I can do when I know people's individual situations. But I'm going to look at some questions here, so you don't have to run off if you don't want. So, Stephen, what about eating basic foods in moderation that have vitamin A? Okay. People who think they're going to avoid all vitamin A are fairly misinformed, to put it nicely. There is some amount of vitamin A in pretty much every food. You don't get to avoid it. Not even, people think that beef has almost none. Beef has some. Carotenoids are way higher in grass-fed beef, just so you know, but they feed grain-fed cattle tons of vitamin A, tons of retinol. So, you don't get to avoid it. What I've done with how I do things is I've decided on a certain amount that is acceptable. Somebody might say, well, that's arbitrary. And I'd say, well, come up with a better way then. I kind of talked to Grant about it. And based on our conversations, I came up with, when I look at something, I don't ever look at things without context. So when I look at a food, I'm looking at multiple things. All the way from the color of the food to, is it a plant? Is it an animal? Is it, can we find out all the individual carotenoids in it? I have a gut reaction to vitamin A. Like my gut is extremely sensitive to vitamin A foods. And that is how I figured out that some foods are a problem and some foods aren't. And the funny thing is when I start taking it, it's a funny thing when I take a food off of the program, when I'm like, I thought it was okay, but my gut sensor is saying this is not. I'll always get emails from people. They're like, yeah, I saw that you took that off of there. I was kind of wondering about that because that made me not feel good either. So I use multiple things to assess a food. And even still, if people are on the program and they're like, I tried that food and it didn't work for me, here's the magical advice. Don't eat that food then. Doc, it hurts when I do this. Classic advice, right? Don't do that. So nobody's ever going to escape vitamin A completely in foods, but we have to set. I liken getting out of vitamin A toxicity a lot to getting out of debt. You got a long way to go, and you got to chip away at it constantly. The one thing we have, oftentimes when people are trying to get out of debt, let's say they get a paycheck, that they can't change their paycheck to get out of debt. What they can change is what they spend. So in terms of vitamin A toxicity, if vitamin A toxicity is the debt, you can't change necessarily how fast your body will dump it into the system. Although we're getting evidence with that serum retinol, we're starting to see that when we can raise the serum retinol, we may actually be increasing the rate of detox, which is a question that Grant and I have about this. Can we speed it up? Based on the blood test that I have, it looks like we can. So you can't, I'm going to say that we can't speed it up just to be safe. But you can change what you spend. You can spend less, which will help you get out of debt. You can eat less vitamin A. That's how you get out of toxicity. You eat less. You can't necessarily control how fast it's going to come out. You can control how much you put in. So at some point we have to decide what is accept, because it's in it. You can't escape it completely. Our bodies are designed to deal with a small amount of it. We can deal with it. We've got it coming in from every direction these days. Every single direction. And then we have the glyphosate problem. If you watched my the unifying theory of chronic disease on YouTube, glyphosate is the biggest change in our environment that stops the phase 1 breakdown of vitamin A in the liver, the cytochromes. That stops the breakdown of vitamin A there, so it builds up toxicity in people. Glyphosate is the biggest driver of vitamin A toxicity. Can people get vitamin A toxicity without ever eating glyphosate? Absolutely. Absolutely. I have tons of people who are on like an all organic diet and they're just killing themselves with spinach and kale and carrot juice and mangoes or then there's the whappers doing their cod liver oil and their dairy and their liver, and you can do it with animal foods, you can do it with plant foods, you can do it with skin cream, sunscreens. Sunscreens are often putting vitamin A in themselves now. Worst decision ever. You want to ruin your skin, use a sunscreen with vitamin A in it. So yeah, Jillian, you were talking about how before you were diagnosed with Hashimoto's, you were drinking 2 to 3 Lucky 7s from Juice Press a day, which had 470% daily value of vitamin A. This is how it happens, folks. People think that foods are like innocent with this. No. Let me just bring up one thing again. Eat a rainbow as a concept. Eat the rainbow, right? Sounds neat. Sounds very Sesame Streetish, right? Which was one of the first places it was promoted. Eat a Rainbow's only been around since 2005. It feels like forever, right? 2005. I have the documentation of this on the website. Was when the Eat a Rainbow started. So if you think eating a bunch of colors is an old thing, nope. You're just having selective memory, and it's a new thing. Eating green and white foods, mainly green and white plant foods, has been around forever. Eating orange and yellow and red and all these other colors, this is new. This is a relatively new thing. And then having them, oh, but you should eat them at every meal. I saw a post on Facebook. This woman was saying, I can't think of a single health condition that couldn't be improved by eating 30 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. 30 servings. I thought it was a joke. She was totally serious. How else could you get vitamin A toxicity other than eating 30 servings a day of fruits and vegetables that are all brightly colored? So, Robert, I don't answer questions on my daily diet because that's just totally irrelevant, because then people think, I do it to protect people from themselves. People think that, oh, if that's what Dr. Smith eats, that must be optimal for me too. So I'm going to eat that way. Nope. I do great on fruit. Not everybody is great on fruit. I do terrible on grains, starches in general. I don't do well on starches. So I don't eat many starches. Some people do great on starches. I don't. So I don't want to convince somebody that they have to eat fruit when they don't do well on fruit and they do better on starches. So I don't get into my diet because I want people to, teach a man to fish. I'm trying to teach people how to figure out to get more in touch with what agrees with them so they can do it for themselves. So they don't have to, we have the food list at the start, but I don't want people to, once people know the gist of the food list, they can do pretty well. But I'm not trying to just, my diet, like as an example, I have generalities about people. People tend to either do really well on starches, like grains and or starchy root vegetable, stuff like that, or they tend to do really well on fruit, sugars. I do really well on sugars. I'm going to have 3 bananas and an apple today. Like, I do great on fruit. I don't do well on starches. Starches just put weight on me. Does that happen for everybody? No. So some people lose weight on starches. Not me. So and then there's another pattern. Some people do great with a light breakfast and a heavier dinner. Some people do better with a heavier breakfast and a lighter dinner. I'm a lighter breakfast and a heavier dinner person. So my food choices in the day reflect that. And so these generalities I like to give people so that they can figure out what, they can be like, well, yeah, I really felt like I do well with big breakfasts and a lighter dinner. And then I tried intermittent fasting and it was a disaster for me. Your physiology doesn't care what your philosophy is. You may read about intermittent fasting and think it's the greatest thing ever. And because they talk about it so well on the internet, but it doesn't work for you. Don't do it then, right? So anyway, I think that's about it. I don't see any more questions. I think I got to all of them. So I'm going to end today's Nutrition Detective podcast with that. Now, one thing I'm looking for those of you who have been on this journey already with me, I would love to have people, anonymous, of course, we'll just be talking without visual, but I'm looking for testimonials where I can ask you a couple questions about how you got vitamin A toxic, the improvements you've had since doing the diet and that kind of stuff. So if you would like to be a guest on this show, on this podcast, either send me a Facebook message or if you have my email, send me an email, because I would love to have real people talking about their real experiences. The written testimonials are great too. Send me written testimonials too, but the voice ones, people jive with those better. And so I'd like to get more of those out. So if you want to contact me about being like a voice testimonial, you're not going to have your face on this. This will be a podcast, and we'll go from there. So I will see you guys next week, if not sooner, on the next Nutrition Detective podcast. Have a great weekend.